Today, you will learn about how humans from thousands of years ago kept food from spoiling. Before refrigerators existed, food spoiled quickly. And for most of human history, spoiled food wasn't just inconvenient. It could mean hunger, illness, or even death. There were no freezers, no electricity, no modern storage of any kind. For thousands of years, people lived entirely at the mercy of time, weather, and decay. And yet, somehow, they managed to keep food edible for months, and sometimes even years. So, how did people preserve meat, vegetables, dairy, and grains long before refrigeration existed? The answer lies in a collection of simple, carefully refined techniques, methods that shaped daily life across the world. This is how food was preserved before refrigeration. For most of the past, fresh food was closely tied to the seasons. Meat was not eaten every day. In many households, animals were slaughtered only once or twice a year. Fruits and vegetables appeared briefly during harvest seasons, then vanished again for months. Once winter arrived or supplies ran low, people relied almost entirely on preserved food. Entire households planned their year around one goal: making sure enough food would last until spring. Preservation wasn't a convenience, it was survival. Over generations, people learned something critical. If they could control moisture, air, temperature, and bacteria, food could be kept safe far longer than expected. One of the earliest and most dependable preservation methods involved salt. Salt works by drawing moisture out of food, and without moisture, bacteria struggle to survive. Meat and fish were packed in salt or soaked in strong, salty brine, then stored in cool, dry places like cellars or sheds. In many regions, curing meat became a seasonal ritual. Late autumn was often dedicated to slaughtering animals and preserving as much meat as possible before winter arrived. Large cuts were salted heavily. Smaller pieces were often dried or smoked afterward. Foods like salted pork, cured beef, and dried fish could last for months. They became essential staples for sailors, soldiers, and rural families. Although these foods were extremely salty, they provided something far more important: reliable calories, during times when fresh food simply didn't exist. Another powerful preservation method relied on smoke. Food, especially meat and fish, was hung above slow-burning fires, sometimes for days or even weeks. The smoke gently dried the food, while coating it with natural compounds that slowed bacterial growth. Smoking also added flavor, and that mattered greatly during long winters, when meals were repetitive and often bland. Many farms and villages had dedicated smokehouses. In colder climates, smoked food could last for weeks, and sometimes even months. Over time, smoked foods became deeply woven into regional cuisines, traditions that still survive today. Drying was one of the simplest preservation techniques of all. By removing water, food became far less welcoming to bacteria and mold. Fruits were sliced thin and laid out in the sun. Grains were dried carefully before storage. Meat could be air-dried and turned into long-lasting strips. This method required almost no tools, only time, airflow, and favorable weather. Dried foods were lightweight, easy to store, and perfect for travel, for traders, travelers, and armies on the move. Dried food was essential. Some preservation methods were discovered not through careful planning, but by accident. When certain foods were left in controlled environments, beneficial bacteria began to grow. These bacteria helped prevent harmful microorganisms from taking over. This process, now known as fermentation, created foods like cheese, yogurt, sauerkraut, and fermented vegetables. Fermented foods often lasted longer than fresh ones. In many cases, they also became safer to eat. They provided nutrients that were otherwise difficult to obtain, especially during winter. Although people didn't understand the science behind fermentation, they carefully refined the process and passed it down through generations. What began as preservation slowly became tradition. Even without electricity, people also learned how to use natural cold. Root cellars were built underground, where temperatures stayed cool and stable year-round. Vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and onions could be stored there for months without spoiling. In colder regions, ice houses were used. Ice was harvested from frozen lakes and rivers during winter, then packed under layers of straw or sawdust to slow melting. This stored ice could last well into summer, helping keep food cool long after winter had ended. These systems required planning, labor, and cooperation, but they worked remarkably well. Another effective preservation method relied on acidity. Food was submerged in vinegar or salty brine, creating an environment where harmful bacteria could not survive. Vegetables, eggs, fish, and even meat could be pickled and stored for long periods. For many families, pickling was a regular seasonal task, closely tied to harvest time. Pickled foods added variety, flavor, and reliability to diets that were otherwise limited. Together, these preservation techniques shaped how people lived. They determined what could be eaten, how long food lasted, and how communities prepared for harsh seasons or unexpected shortages. Food preservation influenced trade routes, travel plans, and even settlement locations. It wasn't just a household task, it was a foundation of everyday life. Today, refrigeration makes food preservation effortless, but many ancient methods are still used. Not because we have to, but because they work. They remind us that long before modern technology, people developed reliable solutions to life's most basic challenges. This was life in the working past. If you like videos of this kind, please leave a like and subscribe for more interesting stories about the past humans used to live.